Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to show you all the books I read in February. Okay, so February was actually a decent reading month. I actually read 7 books. Not the craziest. I mean, I've had some months, I think, like where I read 12 or whatever, but it's a pretty decent amount considering all of the stuff that I had going on. So like, it was Valentine's Day, my husband's birthday, my dad came into town for a week, I went to a book festival. Like, I just had a lot going on, like February into like the first week of March. So to actually have read 7 books, I'm actually pretty proud of myself. So the first book that I read in February was actually The Witch Knot by Olivia Atwater. This one I gave a pretty good rating to. So it is a new series for Olivia Atwater. She has the like Regency series, which it's super cute. Like, it's all of these like cozy Regency fairy kind of stories, and I absolutely loved that series. This is a new one. It follows the same kind like set of characters in like the same world. Like, there's overlap in the characters, but this one's a little bit darker. So The Witchwood Knot actually follows a girl who goes to a house. She's hired to be a governess at a house, but she has like an ulterior motive for being there. It's not just to be a governess, it's also to search for, I believe, a fairy door, like an access into fairy. So she goes to the Witchwood, which is the manor, and finds out that it was built half in fairy, half out. There's a bunch of insidious things that are going on. She meets a character who he's not fae per se. I can't remember what they're called, but it's basically like the equivalent of like Titans versus like gods. They would be like the Titan equivalent. Like, all the fae are actually afraid of these, and there's so few of them, and they were attacked by the fae and buried in the ground and stuff like that. So he's one, he's lingering around. You know, in this manner, the grandmother is dying. The boy that she's supposed to be taking care of goes missing, gets kidnapped by fairies and replaced with a changeling, and she has to save him. So it's a really good story. It is a lot darker than the Regency series, but not quite. It's still very much cozy. It's just a little bit darker theming. So I really enjoyed this one. I love all of Olivia Atwater's books. Like, they're just so well written and just so enjoyable. I didn't realize they were cozy fantasy. Otherwise I would have been like, I read cozy. No, I didn't realize, but they are. They are, and they're super cute. So I really like this series. The next thing that I read in February was actually Foxglove. So you will notice that like some of these are the different editions than the ones I showed you when I was reading them. If I have 2 editions, I will save the prettier one and I'll read like the more common one, just so you know. And I've got 3 editions of this series, but this is the Fairy Loot edition of Foxglove. So I read Foxglove. It is the second book in the Belladonna series, and I also read Wisteria, which is the 3rd book in the Belladonna series. So I finished off the Belladonna series with both of these, and I absolutely love this series. The first one, when Belladonna was coming out, I saw, you know, the description, what it was going to be about. I saw the cover. I was like, oh my god, this is going to be great. I love death. Like, she falls in love with death. This is amazing. And I read Belladonna and I really enjoyed it, but the writing was kind of like eh. But the story was good, but the writing was kind of eh. Foxglove and Wisteria, you can definitely see the growth in the writing. It's a lot better than the first book. In the first book, there's kind of like a murder mystery. Signa is trying to find out what happened to her aunt, and now her cousin is dying of the same thing, and she's trying to basically save her cousin. There's also this mysterious character who turns out to be Death, and she falls in love with him. It's great. This one continues with Signa and Death, but there is now a new conflict that is added into the story. Fate shows up. Fate is Death's brother, and chaos ensues because Fate does not want to see Death happy with Signa. So that's what happens in this one. Obviously, there's another murder mystery that they have to solve. Now, when it comes to Wisteria, things get a little bit different. So Wisteria actually follows Blythe, which is the cousin from Belladonna who was dying. She gets saved. Sorry if it's a spoiler, but it follows Blythe and her forced, arranged marriage situation, which is super hilarious. Like, I enjoyed this book probably the most out of all three. Like, Blythe, I wouldn't say Blythe was my favorite character, but just her interaction, her banter, her like fighting, the arguments, the like harassing each other. Like, I love that stuff. Like when they just pick on each other. And this one is like the first half of it is just filled with the two being so mean to each other. And then obviously they're starting to grow closer. They fall in love, all that kind of stuff. But it's super adorable and I love the series and I'm happy that I finished it, but I'm also pretty sad. But there is a novella that's coming out in around before December called Holly. So I'm excited to see what's in that and, you know, how the story of these characters continues. So I read those two, which was great. They were super good. I rated them both 5 stars. Like, I enjoyed the hell out of them. Next thing I read was another series that I'm finishing. Like, okay, so technically the Witchwood Knot is a new series by the same author, but for me, I consider like all of the books that an author writes to be like, if they're set in the same world, even if it's a different story, it's not part of the series, that is considered the same series for me. So like the Witchwood Knot is technically a different series. It's like the Gothic something series versus like the Regency series. It's in the same world and it's the same like there's Easter eggs of the different characters and stuff like that. So I consider it in the same world. So that was a finish, or not, that was a catch up. Then Foxglove and Wisteria was a finish. And then another one that I knocked off my list was the All of Us Villains series. So I read All of Our Demise by Amanda Foody and Lynn Herman, and I love this series. I absolutely love this series so much. So this is Goldsboro edition, and it's got the plastic cover that always comes on them, so the light might reflect, and I'm sorry if it does. But I absolutely love this series. So the first book is All of Us Villains. It's basically Hunger Games, but if everybody in the Hunger Games was from an ancient magical family and they were all just terrible people. So I absolutely love the series. The first book follows like a group of teenagers who were chosen by their families to represent their families in this like generation long tournament. Like, they've been doing it for generations to basically battle to the death to see which family house gets control over high magic for the next couple decades or whatever. And so all these kids go into this tournament and they're fighting for their lives, they're fighting each other, they're making alliances, they're teaming up, and a whole bunch of other nonsense is going on. So All of Our Demise is the sequel to All of Us Villains. It literally picks up right where the other book left off. So All of Us Villains, a bunch of stuff happens, then it cuts, and this one picks up exactly where it left off. So they could have been the same book, except length would have been crazy. And I'm okay with that because I absolutely love the series. I love the characters. I love the dynamic, the growth, the sacrifice. Like, you get to see in this story the different versions of villainous. Like, it's not just all the scary monster, you know, who eats spiders or you know, crazy stuff like that. It shows you that like selfishness can be villainous, or that being untrustworthy can be villainous, or, you know, caring too much about pride or position can be villainous. There's more villains than just like the traditional concept of what a villain is. And I have to say, this is probably one of my favorite series ever. So this is the UK cover, obviously. So if you are looking in the US, it looks different. You can check one of my other vlogs and see, but this is the UK cover and it's the Goldsboro edition, and these are gorgeous. So I had to get this up, but that made me super happy. Now, I'll be honest with you, after I read that, I was kind of in a slump because it was such a good book and I loved it so much and I was so happy with how it ended. I decided to pick up something completely different that I knew that I was gonna like, and I had just bought the third book from Fairy Loot, so I was like, hey, I'll read this one next, and that would be Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I can finally say the title correctly. If you've watched any of my other videos, I have been struggling to get the name of this book out, but now I have it. It is Map of the Otherlands. Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I can say it without any issue. But I read Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This is the Fairy Loot edition. And when I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, I loved it. Like, I thought that that was the first cozy book that I've ever read. Apparently it's not. I've been lying to myself. And I do like cozy fantasy, so there we go. I did some research and realized I was wrong. But I read the first one and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was just so atmospheric and so magical and just, you know, a good time. Like, you're reading it, you're not stressing out, you're not like, oh, what's gonna happen? You're just like along for the story, in the atmosphere, just vibing, and it was wonderful. So I was like, okay, I obviously need to pick up the rest of the series. So I did. I read Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I got it right. And I liked it, but not as much as the first one. So I still like the cozy vibe and everything, but this one had more plot. So there was like more action. So the first one was very atmospheric and you were just kind of setting up the world, and it felt like a nice warm hug by a roaring fire. Like that's how the book just felt. Like it was very cozy. This one, while it still keeps some of the cozy elements, there is a lot more going on. The overarching plot has extended, and that's what this book covers. So the overarching plot from the first book has extended into this book. While the first book had a little bit of the main plot, it was more kind of episodic in its sections. Like she would help this person and she would help that person, and you know, there was just very little overarching plot. The end plot was just like the climax happened and then it was done, right? The plot of this story is the overarching plot of the series, I believe. So in this one, Emily and Wendell are looking to find the fairy door into the Irish Fae Kingdom, and there's a couple other members who tag along on the way. Like Emily's niece starts going with them, the daughter of the brother who sent her the bear cloak in the first one. And then there's also another scholar from Cambridge who goes along with them. He's kind of a dick. He seems to be the one to, he seems to take up the role that Wendell kind of had in the first one, not like the romantic aspect, but like the conflict sort of aspect. Like he's there to be the conflict for Emily, because at this point in the story, Wendell and Emily have built a relationship. Her niece kind of just does what she says, so there needed someone to combat Emily a little bit, and that's what this character's role plays. So not only are they looking for the fairy door, but they're also looking for two scholars who disappeared about 50 years ago while they were searching this area. So like I said, I enjoyed it. The stakes were a little bit higher. It didn't feel as cozy, but it was still a really good book. So I am quite happy with this, and I'm excited to read the third one. So I know it's already out, but I have the Fairy Loot copy. So I ordered mine. I don't know when it's gonna come out. But this is definitely a series that I can wait for the next one to come out. I can wait for my special edition to be sent before I read it. I'm not too pressed, but if I do ever need to, it's out. I can go get like a Kindle copy and read it or something. The next book that I read in February technically is not a series that I'm finishing. It's kind of starting a series, but technically I started it a really long time ago, so I can't be mad at myself for it. It's not like I'm starting a new series. Like I started this in April of 2024 and I just finished it. I had an interesting situation with this book. I actually lost my first copy of this book. I had to go and buy a replacement because I left it somewhere and I couldn't find it when I went back to look for it. So after I lost it, I kind of put on pause and didn't pick it up for a really long time. And then finally I was like, you know what? I need to finish it. I need to finish all of the books that are on my Goodreads reading book that have been sitting there for a year, because that's just healthy. We need to do that. So I picked up Curious Tides and I finished it. And I enjoyed the plot of the book very much. I enjoyed the plot. I did not, however, enjoy the writing as much. So it's not that the writing was bad by any means. It's not like one of those books where you read it and you're like, did this person even like pass English class? It's not one of those books. It's that the writing provides nothing, no clues to the answers to the mystery. So I love trying, what keeps me most intrigued in a book is going to be all of the breadcrumbs, all of the clues, all of the foreshadowing, like all of that is in a book that kind of leads you to helps you figure out what the twist is, what's going on, what the mystery is. If the book has that, I eat it up, okay? I can't put the book down because I want to solve that mystery. This didn't have any of that. Like there is a big mystery. Like we do not know what is going on. There's a lot of like craziness going on. There's, you know, people being taken and experiments done on them. There's secret societies. There's missing gods. There's lost manuscripts. There's magical powers that appeared out of nowhere. There's this magic system where people are keeping secrets. Like there is so much. There's so much mystery and so many secrets. And you're left in the dark for so much of it. Like there are no breadcrumbs to be found to help you figure out what is going on. Like I tried. And I mean, I'm that person who usually figures out the twist before it happens. Like, I don't think there's been one book where I didn't figure out the twist before it happens, and that's because I didn't even realize there was a twist to figure out. But otherwise, I figure them out, and I couldn't with this. I couldn't figure it out. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? Like, obviously, you can tell, like, okay, this character's gonna end up being shady. His behavior's a little, you know, skeptical, whatever. But it doesn't give you any clues to like the overarching mystery, like what is going on. So it was a bit of a struggle. Since that was not there to hold my attention, it was a bit of a struggle to get through. I did have to get the audiobook version and listen while I followed along. Whenever I'm really struggling with getting into a book or the book is not keeping my attention, I do that. It helps me focus. So I did have to listen to the audio while I was following along with this. And I was able to get through it. And I don't dislike it enough that I'm not going to read the sequel. I am going to read the sequel 100%. I already own it and everything because I want to know what happens, but it's just one of those books where it was tough to read. So, and then the last book that I read in February was also another new book. It's not a series though, it's a standalone. Thank goodness. For now, there might be more, but for now it's a standalone. But I did also start this before 2025. I started it in 2024 and I never finished it. So it was another one of those that I was wiping off of my currently reading list. And that would be A Warm Hands of Ghosts by Katherine Arden. So this is actually this is a Fairy Loot edition as well. I was reading the Owl Crate edition and I ended up giving that to one of my friends because she loves like historical fantasy, especially like wartime stories like me. So I gave her that one and I kept this one. But this is basically this is a story set in World War I, following two siblings, dual point of view. One sibling is a army nurse, Canadian army nurse, and she was injured during the war, was sent home. While she is home, she receives a package with her brother's belongings in it, his tags, his coat, that sort of a thing, and she thinks he's dead, and so does the military. But she gets a vision from a ghost telling her that her brother is not dead and that he needs her to go save him. So she joins back up, not through the military, but through a private mobile hospital that's going to the lines to assist. And she goes back over to Europe to try and find her brother. The other point of view is actually her brother, so you're following him. He was in battle, a shell was dropped on the pillbox he was in, it flipped it over, buried him, and a German soldier who survived the blast under the ground. So the two of them are under the ground, they're trapped, and they are depending on each other to help each other survive and make it out of the war alive rather than just succumbing to death under the ground. I really enjoyed this story. One, World War I doesn't get enough credit. Like, there's so many depictions of like World War II and other wars. World War I is just kind of like left in the dark or, you know, left out of the media, which is really sad because World War I was, you know, a really important period in history. So it should be talked about more, to be honest with you. Now I understand World War II was a lot more involved. There was a lot more death. It was a lot more crazy. The thinking behind it was a lot more crazy, but World War I still should receive some of the attention that it deserves because it still was a very important period and there were still a lot of lives lost and that sort of a thing. So, but anyways, besides my rant about history, I loved so much of this story because it talks about so many interesting themes. Like there's the themes of loss, there's the themes of grief. The main character, Laura, she's following ghosts to save her brother. So, you know, it's that not giving up, that importance of family. Then it talks about, you know, themes of like the military and how, you know, sometimes those generals are sitting back in their fancy houses drinking their tea while, you know, the guys are in the trenches dying, and how sometimes soldiers aren't seen as people, more as pawns. There's a great commentary on, you know, what makes an enemy. The Canadian soldier and the German soldier, they're enemies in this, but they bond over a life and death experience and they help each other, they save each other, you know, they develop this relationship. And then you have like the fantastical elements. So you have the ghosts. You also have depictions of like the devil, myths that ran around, you know, amongst the armies during the war about the devil and ghosts and these different things that are out there just collecting souls basically from those who are dead and dying or, you know, desperate. And I really loved this book so much. The one thing I did not like was the point of views. They switched too quickly. So one of the things that I do not like about dual point of view books is the timing for the point of view change sometimes is intentionally like done to cut you off at the climax of the situation. Like I do not like that, okay? If I'm reading Laura's perspective and then something is really good, it's like cut it, chapter end, and it's not Laura's chapter again, it's now Freddie's. So I'm going from his perspective and back, And I hate that. I hate that more than anything, okay? There's so many books that do that, and I get so mad. I'm like, I don't care about the, I start to lose interest in the other perspective because I want to continue that story with the one perspective, and it pisses me off more than anything. And flashbacks too, like The Invisible Life of Adalyn, that one made me so mad because every time something would get good, there would be a flashback, and then it would change. It drives me up a wall. It drives me up a freaking, just continue the story. Just switch it at a lull, okay? Switch it at a lull. Don't switch it when things are getting really good. Like, why would you do that? But anyways, so other than that, I absolutely loved this book. So these are all the books that I read in February. They were all really, really good. And I got to finish a bunch of books that I had started, and I got to finish some series, and it was definitely a very productive month of catching up on all of the nonsense that I have been neglecting in my life. All of my responsibilities as a reader, I'm working on that. So these are the books, and they're gonna fall down, so I'm gonna put them down, but ooh, I really enjoyed them. So if you have read any of these books, or you are interested in reading any of these books, let me know down in the comments. I love to hear your guys' perspectives on the books that I read, because honestly, like when you read a book, it can be, you can have such a different experience than someone else reading the same exact book, which is why like I enjoy book clubs and stuff like that, is so that you can discuss all of your different like views and takes and how you understood that book. So if you've read any of them, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. If you did like this video, please don't forget to like it. It helps me with the algorithm. And if you have not yet, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can get all of the bookish content from me. So that's it for me today, guys. And I appreciate you stopping by again. And I will catch you next time in my next video. So, bye.